Dun, dun, dun. Good day, everybody. Welcome to Dental Voice Season 2 with Zyris. My name is Rolando Mia. I'm excited because I can't wait to talk to Melissa. But before we get into that, Dental Voice is a forum to give professionals in dentistry an opportunity to share their perspective, their opinions, their thoughts, and most importantly, ask them for advice with regard to kind of what we're dealing with today. And it's so awesome. So today, our guest is Melissa Turner. She is a dental hygienist, but she's got a master's. She's got a lot more education, a lot more experience than someone who is just a registered dental hygienist. In addition, when you look at the things that she's done in her life, I'm excited because I got up this morning and had coffee, and there's a bazillion things she's done, but enough of that. What I want to do is say thank you for joining us. Good day, Melissa. How are you?
Hello, Rolando. Thank you for everybody watching. It is amazing to be here and to not have to be with my kids for this hour. So thank you so much. Yes. Yeah.
Well, so let's get right into this because this is called Dental Voice. The first thing I want to ask you about is the election. Who are you going to vote for? No, I'm not going to ask you about the election. No, we're not going to go there.
Wow.
So one of the things that I've noticed about what you've done and what you're doing is kind of there's an incredible energy around providing access and then care. If you could kind of share with us what's driving all of the things that you're doing? If you look, you worked with the Dental Peeps Network. You launched iHeart Mobile Dentistry. There's this whole context in Celerant Consulting. You're their chief hygiene officer, co-founder of the first annual National Mobile Conference, American Mobile Teledentistry Alliance. I mean, what's driving that? Take us through that.
You know what? I'm just having fun. And isn't that like what we're all supposed to do in our career is have fun? And it took me a while to get here, but I'm having fun. The bottom line though, Rolando, and thanks for asking, because I honestly don't get that question a whole lot. And so to be able to like just lay it all out and share my heart is exactly what I want to do. I want people to ask me the why am I doing these things? And very rarely does it happen. So the bottom line is I want to make dentistry better for not only the patient, but for the provider, right? Because if the provider is thriving, if the provider, is really living a full and complete life, and mental health is great, and everything is just fulfilling, then we can communicate that much more with our patient. The patient has a better chance at success and achieving health. It just goes round and round like that. And so everything I do, whether it's mobile dentistry, teledentistry, whether it's consulting, whether it's just being an advocate for underserved individuals, everything I do is to help create a better environment for patient and provider.
And that's it sounds like that's the energy that's driving you, because I mean, COVID-19 literally whacked us up the side of the head beginning of this year. And it's one of the most, it literally is and has caused more, let's just call with people, and anxiety and fear and lack of information. Throw that into the mix now, the underserved, care, access to care. Not only do you have patients who are afraid to do that, you've got clinicians, dentists, hygienists, dental assistants who are afraid. How does this kind of fit into that? And what is it that you're doing to, help people understand that it's okay?
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing when I talk about underserved individuals within dentistry, it's not just indigent communities. It's not just the rural outstate populations, and it's not just those that don't have autonomy. Like, if we really take a look around, we know dentistry is a silo. We know dentistry is hard to access, and it's a difficult industry to be in, but also for patients to receive care from. And so when we think about underserved individuals, it's really our cousins, our parents. It's everyone, because it's it's a fortunate thing for someone to be able to receive regular access to dental care. And so, especially now in a COVID environment, we were shut down for months, and now we're on that 6-month cycle where we're starting to see that dip in patients again. And it's just, we're at a point where we can connect dental professionals, dental practice owners. We all went through the same shared experience that our patients went through, the same COVID-19 hell, right? We all went through it. And so it's a way, right? It's a way we're all trying to recover. It's a way that we can connect with the patients and really help care for them, because we're all trying to recover from it and figure out what the new normal is. And some of us are trying to hold on to that old normal in the past.
So from a provider perspective, let's start there. Looking at the providers and looking at the context that you're trying to establish, what is, in your opinion, what would you say are like the most important things that they need to remember and they need to ensure that they're doing now?
Yeah, so right now it's all about rebuilding that trust with the patient. It's all about rebuilding that trust with each other on the clinical team. And it's also all about rebuilding trust within yourself too. I got this, I can go into the future. We can make this dental practice successful. We can treat our patients, even though you might feel unsafe, even though we're in hazmat suits and all that kind of PPE. So right now it's rebuilding that trust, and that comes through communication. And so I've learned this in my marriage. I've learned this in these partnerships that I've had. It's all about communication. And so if we can create touch points with patients to further that communication, so whether it's virtually reaching them in the palm of their hand, or whether it's initiating care and bringing that oral care and oral services to their house and delivering it to them. I mean, those are two main ways that we can say, hey, patient, we care for you. We're going to go out of our way. And instead of expecting you to come through our doors in the fixed dental practice, we're going to come to you and help make you feel safe. And when we communicate with this with them, this is the key to really coming back and recovering from COVID-19 shutdown and everything that came with that.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. I'd love to kind of dig a little further. When you say rebuilding the trust, what happened? In your opinion, what happened? I mean, dentistry has not always been, people don't go, I want to go to the dentist today. It's that the stigma associated with it. But now, what do you mean trust? What happened from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, so there's two ways to look at it. And the first one is the acute trust that was lost during COVID-19. So dentistry, was top of the news for saying it's the most unsafe career to be in. Dentistry was shut down because it was unsafe to be in the dental practice during COVID-19. And so there's that kind of acute short-term trust that was kind of lost between the patient and provider. But also, we've had decades worth of distrust, like you just talked about, Rolando. Decades where transparency with patients wasn't happening. Patients would walk in and not know if they have to pay anything for that appointment today. And we can rebuild trust that way. We can begin to say, hey, patient, we got you. This is a conversation. This is a dialogue. We're going to help make your mouth healthy. We're going to help make your whole body healthy. And just because we're wearing a white coat and we're professionals doesn't mean that you have to be scared of us. We can bring back that empathy and active listening and all that kind of thing into the patient relationship that's almost been lost in the last decade or two, I would say. Mm-hmm.
So the trust is not necessarily in the clinical, from a clinical aspect perspective. It sounds like it's reassuring people that this is part of systemic health, that you need to understand how this fits in, because we've kind of lost that. Do you think there's fear? If I were to say fear, and I'm talking, you mentioned both the patient and the provider. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's fear there that's kind of driving some of the behaviors that we're seeing today?
Oh, of course. I mean, So the first thing that happens when I tell even my friends, when I first meet them, they say, "Oh, what do you do?" Like, I'm at the playground all the time with my kids, right? So we're meeting like these new mom friends and parents of the kids that my kids are playing with. And the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, so what do you do for a job?" And I say, "Oh, I'm in dentistry. I'm a dental hygienist." And the first thing they do is kind of go like this and look away. "Oh, don't look at my teeth." Like, they're so, and even we experience this too. I'm like, "Okay, I haven't bleached in a while. Don't look at my teeth," right? So that in itself produces fear because the teeth, they're right in front. You can't hide it. You can't hide it from anyone you're talking to. And so I think fear comes a lot from being unsure if people's smile are beautiful, if they feel like their smile is beautiful. And that's, I think, a lot of the disconnect in dentistry. We take it for granted because we are knee deep in people's mouths all day long. Like, I've spent most of my entire adult life like smelling other people's breath, and I don't want to, right? Like analyzing tongues, and I don't want to, right? My adult life is like dedicated to this. And so it's normal for us to look at somebody's mouth and be like, "Hey, you're fine. Like, everything's great." But for people, it's a vulnerability, really. Like, when a patient comes to us, it's vulnerability. Yeah.
Wow, I love the context around you. You're so right. When oh, you're in dentistry. Oh, dude, don't look at my teeth. I haven't. I wouldn't. I this, and I think there's a reassurance. Now, technology. If you look at COVID, if anything, it's accelerated so many different things, and it's forced us to really face issues or face topics that we kind of put to the side because they weren't that. One of them is this whole issue of technology. And I mean, I'm touching on that because in everything you've done, teledentistry is a big aspect of that. How does that fit into this kind of the whole reassuring, communicating? How does it fit into the overcoming the fear, that type of stuff? How do you see that happening?
Yeah, Rolando, it's interesting because it's so multifaceted. It's depending who you're talking to, right? The answer to that is depending who you're talking to, what patient you're talking about. But I think the gist is there's a couple things that's happening right now in dentistry, and it's really redefining dentistry more than it ever has before. So we've got the technology like you were talking about, the teledentistry and other clinical technologies, and that are really moving at the speed of light or sound, just moving faster than we can imagine. And to think that a single technology could drastically change dentistry. I mean, that's where we're at. A technology could come out tomorrow, or it already has with teledentistry, and it can change the entire face of dentistry once we understand how to use it, right? So then we also have a shift in our patients. We have a generational shift that's happening right now. We have the millennials. Okay, do you have a bad millennial joke? You can put it in right here. I'll leave a spot for you. But we've got the millennials, becoming the rise of the workforce and becoming the leaders and also becoming the patient majority soon. And so what that means is millennials are expecting technology to be integral in dentistry. They're expecting us to come to them through their phone and deliver care, right? And then on top of that, we have an industry now where more female dentists are graduating dental school than males. And so not only do we have the shutdown that has changed dentistry, we have technology that's ever changing dentistry. We have the millennials that are coming up. And now we have kind of a gender shift within dentistry. And whether we want these things to happen or not, it's going to completely redefine dentistry as we know it over the next 5 years. And that's I'm really excited about dentistry because it's going to give us a chance to start over. I'm always a fan of starting over and being able to change for the better. Yeah, I don't even know if that answered your question, but
it basically, tell me if I got this. Dentistry is evolving. There's so much change that we have to stay on top and we have to embrace it, because if we don't, we're gonna basically kind of get left behind.
That's right.
Is that kind of the context around that, or now let me ask you this? you mentioned the whole idea of serving and gaining access to the population, and then also you mentioned that the it- our our generation, the boomers, are transitioning. There's a new group of individuals who are kind of coming into this. Yeah, you are the future of what's happening to our world here. Based on what you're hearing from all of the platforms and all the communications and all that, what are, in your opinion, the top three biggest things that you say are going to affect, beyond what you just said, that affect based on patients, based on providers? What are the three biggest things you think are going to be affecting this, and how do you see us having to navigate through that?
Yeah. So the three biggest things I would imagine are how we deliver care. So that comes with teledentistry and mobile dentistry. And if we take a step back and really look at those two things in particular, teledentistry is really the most modern form of mobile delivery, right? Neither the provider nor the patient need to be in the dental practice. They could both be in their own beds or on the beach or whatever for that encounter to take place, right? So that's going to be completely transitional, because that leads to the second thing that's going to really usher in the future, and that's a change in the provider mindset. And I kind of alluded to this before, but instead of being in a small dental practice with fixed walls, and instead of being in a small op and expecting the patients to come to us, I think there's going to be a mindset change within dental professionals and practice owners and within dentistry as a whole, where we no longer sit and wait for our patients to come through our front doors, right? I mean, imagine the decrease in no-show rates if you can take the service to the patient. I mean, I in clinical practice, I remember practice owners just like crossing their fingers and holding their breath, waiting for that next patient to come through the door, right? What if you don't have to do that anymore? What if you could just take it right to the patient? Yeah. And so then along with that, I think too, the millennials are starting to expect to be treated as consumers and not necessarily patients. And so I think we'll see an increase in branding. You know, like my generation, we love Starbucks, right? We like going to Starbucks, and we can anticipate the same thing and consistency at any Starbucks we go to. And so I think that's why DSOs are starting to take off, and this consolidation of dental practices. But I think we'll see an increase or a shift in how we brand and how we market our services to the patients. And we're seeing that already. We are. Mhm.
Wow. Actually, what kind of blew my mind is this context of bringing the dentistry to the patient, as opposed to having because as a patient, you're on your way in and you get distracted and you're like, oh, well, I'm not going. But if you come to me, in your heart, yeah, I need to do this because I didn't want her to look in my butt, or I didn't want him to, but okay, he's here. I guess I'm psyched. That's interesting. So you're kind of breaking down the walls around that. That's a novel concept. And it's interesting because in my mindset, when I thought about mobile dentistry, it's you show up somewhere so that people can gain better access to you. The context that you're building is, no, you actually show up to the patient's location, and it's not that they don't have a choice, but now you're bringing the care to them. And yeah, that's interesting. How'd you come up with that?
I didn't come up with it. No, I mean, there are use cases around the country that are proving this delivery and proving it successfully. And the cool thing is, it can be like, once you tear down the fixed brick and mortar walls of your practice, like in your mindset, then I say this all the time, and it's so cheesy, but the opportunities are endless, right? So over the COVID-19 shutdown, for instance, these practices who had already started delivering their care, they didn't have to shut down quite as much, because patient, they could go to the patient instead of the patient like being scared and fearful and having to come to the dental practice. And we're seeing a lot of these large mobile organizations that would take care into workplaces like Nike headquarters or Amazon. We saw them pivot now to take care into patients' homes. And it's kind of a different business model. It's great for residential towers because everyone's there already. But we also have successful mobile practices who literally take concierge services, to everyone's houses. And once in a while, they'll stop at a community center and some folks will meet them there. And, those will be the patients they have for the half a day. But this model has already been proven. So it's nothing new. It's just what is new now is our patients are asking for us to do this. And even before the shutdown, our patients were asking us to deliver things to them. I mean, think how many times we order from Amazon or order our groceries, or I can even get my library books delivered here in Portland sometimes. Usually comes on bike, but it's nice and fun. It's Portland for you. But, it's these things that sometimes dentistry can be static. And one of
sometimes. Oh, you're being so kind. Come on, let it out.
Sometimes we just need to say, hey, dentistry, get your butt in gear. We are fluid. We have to adapt and meet the needs of who we are serving. And it's time to really get our butt into gear, especially after the shutdown. So that's my message. If you remember anything from this conversation, get your butt into gear.
It's interesting. We've had several guests on, one very recently, Dr. Mark Lightung, and he mentioned hygiene is the engine, is kind of the thing that really drives the practice. Because in hygiene, that's where all of that's the initial engagement. That's where the initial assessments happen. Do you agree with that? Do you see it as the kind of the front end of the whole thing?
I mean, Rolando, I might be a little bit biased because I'm a hygienist, but absolutely I do. Okay, so here's what's been happening for the last couple of years now. Probably every week, I have a new conversation with a company, whether inside or outside of dentistry, industry leaders or folks wanting to bring innovative things into dentistry. And the first thing they say to me is, Melissa, we know dental hygienists are the face of the future of dentistry because we've seen healthcare do this. We know that preventive, measures are now being incentivized instead of just treating disease and getting incentivized for that. We're seeing in healthcare now that prevention is starting to be incentivized, and so it's only going to be a little bit of time before that really comes to dentistry. And so, who's the prevention focused, person on the dental team? It's the hygienist. So obviously, yes, hygienists are going to play a huge role in the future. And, I'll be quite honest and say that I've had this conversation with a lot of practice owners, and sometimes they get a little scared when they hear that. Right. Because for whatever reason. But the truth is, if hygienists can succeed, then the dental practice will succeed as well. And if a dental practice owner can do all they can to empower their hygienist, then they will see a change in their practice, and it's one of these things. It's happening, and it's just a matter of, okay, are you going to jump on board or not? Are you going to start to really empower the hygienist? And here's something too. So we talk about mobile dentistry. If a dental practice can send a hygienist out into the field, even just one day a week, or two hygienists out into the field one day a week, think about how much chair time, like clinical, surgical chair time, that would open up for the dental practice. So then they can have more patients come in and do more lucrative procedures, do the complex all-day procedures that they didn't have time for, in the beginning. They can even bring in traveling specialists and house all the referrals under one roof, which is an entirely different dialogue, an entirely different conversation. But it's a win-win for the dental team, and it's a win-win for the practice owner and for the hygienist. So that's why I'm so passionate about this. It's like, dude, we've got to get on board. Like, this is where we're going. Let's just get on board.
Dude, all right. So now, all right, I'm going to hit you here, okay? I love the sentiment behind that, and I love it. And in the practices where you see a phenomenal relationship between the hygienist and the dentist, and there's a meeting of the minds and an engagement, it's wonderful. Yeah. What we're hearing, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is there is friction between the hygienist and the dentist. And it's on both sides. And by that, I mean, you got dentists who feel, no, my way or the highway. And then you've got hygienists who are coming back with, I'm more important, my way or the highway. How do you bridge that gap? How do you, your opinion, on both sides, it sounds like you've talked to quite a few people. How do you bridge, or what advice you give to the hygienists who get really demanding and who start getting, very aggressive? And then how do you get the same on the dentist or the owner side who is like, you're not gonna, you can't, and all that. So thoughts on that? I'm curious.
Are you sure you have my thoughts on that? No, it comes down to really what kind of conscious biases we're holding on to in the dental practice. And again, this is an entirely different conversation, because when a dentist graduates from dental school, when a hygienist graduates from hygiene school, we're already almost indoctrinated into the antiquated ways of thinking, and then to go into a small team environment, it even kind of amplifies that the biases that we might have that we don't even know we have, right? So a significant part of my experience as a clinical hygienist has been living and working all around the States. So, after I graduated hygiene school, I spent the next decade kind of following my partner's journey around the States, his educational journey, and his career journey. And so every year or two, we would be living in a different state. And really, Rolando, within the first 6 years of clinical practice, I already had 4 different state licenses. And so it was insane. And it got to a point where, it wasn't even worth me going on an interview to get a permanent position, because the practice owner would look at my resume and be like, you're not anywhere for more than 3 years. Why would I want you to come on my team, right? So what I started doing was temping as much as I could, and for full time, right? So to this day, I have lived and worked in hundreds of dental practices all across the States. And what that taught me was that this dynamic is rampant. This friction between the dentist and the hygienist is rampant. And it's something that needs to be healed. And the only way you can do that is to dive into yourself and figure out, why am I having these biases, and then communicate. So like over the shutdown, we saw we saw very little communication between the practice owners and their team. It wasn't just practice owners and hygienists, it was practice owners and their team, because nobody had answers. Nobody knew what PPE to use for a while. Nobody knew when they were going to come back to the practice. And so that caused extra friction on, these relationships that were already, kind of built on trauma and distrust. And so, yeah, it's heavy. Like when I think about this, and a lot of times, traditionally in the past, a dentist works for a solo practice for his whole life. A hygienist works, for the same practice for her own, right? And now we're not seeing that anymore. So we're starting to understand that, okay, the problems that this dental practice has is the same thing that this dental practice has. And we're starting to understand that this is a much larger issue than we even thought. So that's sad.
What I got out of that is this: it's real. So folks, it's real. The practices that are getting along are not everybody. The majority, this still can, and I mean, take it right from the horse's mouth, quote unquote. You've been in hundreds, worked in hundreds across multiple states, and you're like, dude, this is real. So first thing you got to do is acknowledge it's real, because in order to address or overcome issues, you got to address it. And I love the message, which is figure out what your biases are, figure out what it is that's causing you to do this, and then communicate. And you brought it all back to communicating, which is pretty cool. Holy cow, right on, pretty cool. So
it's never been a better time too. I mean, we've all been through the same shared experience. Like I said earlier, like we've all been through the COVID-19 shutdown. So we can all relate, and empathize with each other now. And so it's a great time to start that communication. Really.
That's cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
What better than now? And I love it. So you do a whole bunch of different things. If I understand correctly, you have a partner in crime that you do stuff with. What's that all about?
I do. So my very good friend, you might know her as the geriatric tooth fairy, but Miss Sonia Dunbar, she is a TEDx speaker. She is a hygienist. She is a powerhouse and an inspiration. She is the diversity representative for Crest Oral B. And so you'll see her around speaking on that. So she and I have teamed up in the last year to really begin to proclaim the message of mobile dentistry, of teledentistry, and about what it means for the future of dentistry. And she and I have always said 2020 is going to be a big year for mobile and teledentistry. And we didn't know how big of a year because the COVID shutdown even accelerated it. I mean, you search teledentistry in Google Trends and you see this spike, this just vertical spike right around mid-March when everything shut down. And so she and I, we launched the first National Mobile and Teledentistry Conference back right before the shutdown, and we probably the last conference to even be held. We came home and right then everything started shutting down, and that was an amazing conference. It was to bring together. It was kind of like a family reunion. We were happy if we could get 100 people in the room, right? And it sold out, and it sold out again. We had to find more space. And so what we realized from that is that this is in more demand than we even thought. And so our next conference is coming up March 4th through 6th, and it will be in person and it will be virtual. It'll be hybrid. And so that's really fun and amazing. And we can't wait. We'll be social distancing and masked up, but we're still going to have fun.
Where is it going to be?
This will be in Orlando, Florida.
Okay, very good. So first of all, that's awesome. And we might have to speak with Sonia at some point here and kind of get the skinny on all that. But if you were to take everything we've been talking about here and kind of wrap it up as a message that you'd like to get out to our community, to our patients, to clinicians and their teams, what would that be?
Well, Rolando, I think the message would be this. Dentistry is changing, whether we like it or not. And it's changing in a significant way. And it's changing because of what we've been through as providers. It's changing because of our patients are changing, generations, our society has changed. I mean, so it's kind of this is the bottom line. You either hop on board and help control the change and help, use it to your advantage, or you don't, and then you might have to struggle. So there's this theory out there, the Stoic philosophers of days old. They say that in any situation, there's three components to any situation. So any situation has things that you can change, that you have control over, things you cannot have control over, and things that you can impact. And so, I encourage anyone who's listening to this, we've all been through hell and back the last 6 months, and take what you can impact and kind of make that work for your future. Don't just sit back and say, I can't do anything. Like usher in the future. It's going to be bright, and we're on that path.
Wow. Very, very, yeah, spot on. Excellent. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time and really, being out there and expressing and being very direct with us with regard to that. Special thanks to Amanda Hill, RDH, because of her, you're here, and I have to give her grief. So there you go. If people wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that if they wanted to send you a message or talk to you?
Yeah, so I am always on social media. So you can either find me on Instagram at The Tooth Girl, or you can just find me on Facebook under Melissa Turner. And give me a couple days, but I will get back to you, I promise.
Cool. And then do you have a website, the things that you're doing with other are there other websites that you have, or is there a place that people can go to?
Yeah, so the conference, if you just search National Mobile and Teledentistry Conference, it will come up. You can also, you're welcome to join my Facebook group. It's called I Heart Mobile Dentistry. And if you join that group, that's like the central area where kind of everything mobile and teledentistry comes through. And so you'll definitely be able to be kept up to date on everything if you join the group.
Excellent. I Heart Mobile Dentistry.
That's right.
Excellent. Well, hey, 3 months, 6 months, sometime in the future, I'd love, there's so many more things we could talk about, but I want to be respectful of your time. Would you be willing to come back and kind of share what's been going on as we learn more? Would you be willing to sit down and start tackling a couple more of these issues and kind of share your additional thoughts with us?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime that I can be real and just like talk from the heart instead of giving a presentation. We're all zoomed out, right? So anytime we can be real and just chat and have good chats like this, Rolando, I am open for it. Mm-hmm.
Well, so thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hey, folks, those of you who are going to watch this, if you have any questions for Melissa, please feel free to share. Reach out to her. If you like the content of this, please feel free to share. If you have any questions for us, come check us out at Zyris Dental on our Facebook. Melissa, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. Please be safe. I look forward to talking to you and giving you more grief. How's that?
Love it. Thank you, Rolando. Thank you, Zyris.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care.